would like to call the Finance Committee to order for August 14th, 4:30 to 3 p.m. Let's start with roll call. Alder Galvin.
Here.
Alder Levied. Here. Alder Corpus Dax. Present. And Alder Dorf here, Chair. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved by Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Levied. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Approval of the minutes from the July 10th, 2018 Finance Committee.
So moved.
Moved by Alder
Second.
Levied, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, regular business. Request by the Finance Director to review and discuss the 2017 year-end financial results and management letter for the city. The city's audit partner will be present to discuss documents with the committee. Do we need to open the floor for that?
Yes, please.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to open the floor.
And then I will turn it right over to our partners, which are Shank,
Okay.
and to present the results.
I'll
of our-
second.
Who moved it?
I'll move to.
Alder Dax moved it, and Alder Galvin seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The floor is
Can you
open.
just say your name?
Dave Mako, I'm the audit chair.
And I'm Josh Swanson, the manager on the engagement.
Okay.
I'm going to briefly go through the annual financial report, and then Josh is going to go through the management communications. But certainly, if anyone has any questions as we go through either of the documents, feel free to interrupt us. The comprehensive annual financial report, it represents the financial statements and results of operations for as of and for the year ended December 31st. So the city and all the personnel of the city spend a lot of time accumulating all the financial information that is contained within your comprehensive annual financial report. Our role as auditors is really identified as making sure that the financial report accurately reflects the financial position and results of operations of the city. So if you go through the CAFR, there are a number of sections. Introductory that really talks about kind of what's in there in a letter of transmittal. There's a financial section, which includes our audit report and the financial statements of the city. And then there is a statistical section and a single audit section. So it's kind of broken down into a number of areas.
Anyone want a book to look at?
Mine. Yes. Yes, Alder Levied and Alder.
You each got one in your mailboxes, correct? You each have
We did.
received one of these?
Did we?
Well,
Just there.
I've just been home.
No, no,
Well, it
this
was
would
a long
have
time
been like
ago.
a couple weeks ago.
Been home.
If not, you're welcome to keep
This
this.
is kind of,
Great.
that's right.
Thank you, that's good. So like I said, there's a number of sections within this document that really reflect the financial position. So I'm just going to hit a couple of the highlights and then turn it over to Josh, who's going to go through some of the changes. But like I said, it really reflects what happened in 2017. So we turn to page 9. The city does participate in a certificate of excellence in financial reporting. So this is a program by the Government Finance Officers Association in which your audit report, your comprehensive annual financial report, goes through a rigorous review by multiple different professionals throughout the United States that provide feedback to the quality of the report, the documents that you contained. This certificate indicates that your prior year report met the financial standards of the board of the Government Finance Officers Association. It's really a reflective of the fact that the city is able to produce a annual financial report that contains much more than just the actual data. It contains statistical, management discussion analysis, and it's really a reinforcement that the city is able to accurately track all the information. So this is for last year. Your report was submitted for 2017. We believe it accurately will meet those standards, but every year it gets evaluated. So it's a very prestigious award. In Wisconsin, there's probably only somewhere around 25 governments that do receive that award on an annual basis. Then starting on 13, 14, and 15, this is really our contribution. It's called the Independent Auditors Report. We talk about the financial statements. We talk about these financial statements are derived directly from the financial record. So the information you're receiving on a monthly basis as part of your committee and council, we're using the same information to prepare this annual financial report. So it comes directly from that information. Management is responsible for preparing and maintaining that throughout the year. Our responsibility, as isolated in the next 3 paragraphs, is to provide an opinion on the accuracy of that. And if you go to the bottom of page 13, we indicated that in our opinion, the financial statements refer to about percent fairly in all material respects. So that is the best opinion you can receive. It's called an unmodified. It means we make no modifications to the report you have in front of you. The rest of page 14 and 15 just go through various other different communications on sections within this document. At the end of the document, there is what we call our single audit report, where not only do we look at the financial information on the financial statements, we look at the city's compliance with federal and state regulations on the grant programs that you do receive. So you receive a number of grant programs throughout your departments and throughout the city. Our audit also includes a compliance audit on those grant programs where we issue or indicate if the city has not complied in our testing. If you go through the single audit section, you'll find that, in our opinion, the city complied with all the requirements, both on the federal and state. Once again, reflective of the strong financial condition and internal control that you do have here within the city. And then I just want to point out pages 16 through page 27 is management's discussion and analysis, and this is prepared by the management of the city. It goes through a number of different factors, more in a narrative format of what happened in 2017. How does that compare to the prior year? So it encouraged the committee to review that. Then if we turn to page 28 and 29 and 30, these are your government-wide financial statements. So when Josh is going to go through our management communication, he's going to talk about the government fund balances and some of the operations there. But the statement of net position and the statement of activities on pages 28 through 30 represent the city on a full accrual basis. So the primary reason that this is important is it identifies what your assets that you're maintaining. So if you look at under 2017, total assets of the city, which include both the water utility, transit, and your governmental operations, you're really managing about $770 million of assets. A lot of these are the roads and the infrastructure that move citizens throughout the city. But those are things that are part of your assets and part of things that you have to replace at some point in time. So, it's just a reflection of what you're really managing and how that occurs over time. Liabilities, et cetera. So if you look at the last year to this year, no real significant changes under your government-wide. But I'd just like to point out that, this isn't how you adopt your budget, but it kind of reflects as if you would evaluate yourself as a full enterprise operation. So, okay. Any questions before I turn it over to Josh?
No?
All right.
Thank you.
I'll be going through the management communications, the staple document that you probably plan to do possibly.
They would have a electronic,
Or
they got one in their packet, we actually start right on it's item number D1, and we have other copies.
Yep,
It should have been right in your packet.
it is. Ready.
So starting on page 1. All right. Starting on page 1, this is additional required communication both to the committee and management of the city. It goes into a little bit more detail about the audit, how we use sampling, how we look at internal controls, and just a little bit more information that I won't get into all of the details, but on page 2 discusses as Dave mentioned, that not only our audit incorporates the financial statements, but also the schedule of federal and state awards. And then on page 3 discusses some of the more significant estimates. Obviously, at the timing of financial information and when the audit is performed, not all information is available. So there are some estimates embedded within the financial statements, and page 3 summarizes some of the more significant estimates. On page 4 continues disagreements with management. There were no disagreements. The audit went very well from our perspective. We work closely with finance, not only finance but other departments, reviewing their procedures and controls. And everyone is very helpful gathering the information, so we appreciate that. And then moving on to the summary information, starting on page 6. These are ending fund balances as of December 31st, 2017 with a comparative column for December 31st, 2016. So you can see, starting with the general fund, the different breakdown of the components of your fund balance. The big number I want to focus on is the unassigned fund balance of approximately $14.5 million. That fund balance represents money that's available for any purpose. It's not designated or set aside either by outside entities or management or the council. So that $14.5 million did increase from last year of approximately $700,000. In comparison to the city's fund balance policy and expenditures, you're right in line with your policy. If you jump ahead to page 9, you will see management's response regarding the fund balance. So the city's fund balance indicates that they intend to keep their fund balance between 17 and 25%. You're at 19.2%, so you're right in the middle, right where you want to be for your general fund unassigned fund balance. Back on page 6, the special revenue funds. I won't go through the detail of each line item here, but these are different funds that are set up with the specific purposes in mind, and you can see comparative balances with all of your special revenue funds. On page 7 and 8 capture your capital projects funds. These tend to vary a little bit more from year to year due to the timing of projects, when the debt is issued, when you receive the funding, as well as your tax increment districts, depending on when a TIF district starts a project, when the TIF increment is generated. You may have some timing differences. So you see a little bit more fluctuation in your capital project fund balances. But this page 7 summarizes all of those funds. Page 8 also shows the deficit balances in your TIF district funds. In general, it's not something to be too alarmed about, but you do want to continue to monitor these balances. Sometimes the deficit balance, like I said, is just due to the timing of the project versus when you generate the increment. Others, you may have some permanently negative balances that you'll want to monitor and see what you can do. Start tracking the end of the life of the TIF district.
But it looks like overall, it balances out so that we're in the positive in the end.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So overall, your ending governmental fund balances are at $81.6 million at the end of the year. Then there's some graphs on page 8 and 9 just showing some of the information in graph form that we went through, but I'll cover that. Page 10, this is a condensed version of an income statement for your health and self-insurance fund. So you can see your operating revenues and operating expenses with comparative numbers through to 2016. So this is activity that's January 1st through December 31st. So this captures a period in time versus just ending balances. But you can see the health self-insurance fund generated an operating income of approximately $412,000 in 2017.
We had a loss in 2016. Okay.
Typically, these funds have fluctuations based on claims. I mean, it's a highly volatile sometimes claim years. So.
Page 11 goes into the workers' compensation. Again, another self-insurance fund. The balances at the end of the year have been negative, but this is a little more common with the workers' comp fund, just due to, again, the claims that you have and the charges and the rebates that you get. So something to monitor. You can see management's response to address that deficit at the bottom of page 11.
Can I add, within that number, that loss, that doesn't, that includes a reserve of claims to come. Again, it's an
Right.
estimate.
Yeah,
So
yep, the IBNR is an estimate, but yeah, that is included in there. So.
Okay.
And then one more self-insurance fund year liability on page 12. You can see the fund did have an operating loss and a decrease in net position of almost $700,000. Still in the positive at the end of the year. And again, you can see management's response to this fund.
Oh, I understand. I know. Okay.
And then lastly, on page 13, just some additional communication as a informational only. I guess going forward, there are some new accounting standards coming up. New accounting and reporting for leases. It's not going to change practical, everyday purposes of leases. It's just some new reporting standards that you'll see in 2019 and 20 that cover the leases. So nothing that's going to change from an everyday perspective, but just something to be aware of that you may see some changes in the financial reports.
Any questions?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
At a high level, obviously, we have no other comments. I mean, the audit went very well. The staff here at the city did an excellent job of preparing for the audit. It takes a lot of time, obviously. You look at the size of the book, it tells you there's a lot of information in there and you're managing it. So from our perspective, the audit went very well. We, once again, like Josh said, want to appreciate the staff here at the city. We had no internal control deficiencies either in the single audit or the financial reporting. So it's really complimentary of the staff throughout the city here.
Thank you, and thank you, staff, for doing such a good job on this.
Sounds good.
Do you need a motion on this?
Just motion to close the floor.
Do it first, of course.
Sorry, lost my head.
Motion to close the floor. Second, after Galvin. Second by Aldercorpus. Yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
We can receive and place on file.
Okay.
I'll
I
make
would
one.
enter a motion to receive and place on
Place
file.
Yep.
So second Galvin, second Aldercorpus Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for your good explanation. All right. Go back to my agenda now. Minute number 2. Consideration and possible action to waive outstanding 2017 and 2018 property taxes levied on 606 South Broadway Street.
This was an item that was brought to the finance department that the owner of this property wanted to discuss, one, getting his assessment lowered, and also potentially believes his property should be exempt, and that he wants to get his property tax waived. We ended up bringing this through Alder Johnson. It's in his area, and so that's how it actually got put on here. And I will actually turn it over to our assessor, so he can explain to you the situation. And then at that point, I apologize. Is Pastor Rico here? Right there. Okay. Nice to meet you. And then Alder Johnson is here also.
Good.
Unless Alder, you would like to start, or should we have the assessor start? I think what the assessor.
What?
We need to open the floor.
Our assessor is a city
The assessor's
assessor,
a
so
city
it should be
assessor.
okay.
Yes, we're okay.
And let him kind of, we'll have him just kind of go through, from our perspective, the kind of the timeline, the situation where we're at, and then we can open the floor and hear from the outside party.
Okay, 2017,
Ross, can you just, for the record?
for the record, Rush One, City Assessor.
Thank you.
2017 assessed value established for 2017. Pastor Rico purchased property in February of 2017, which in our estimation renders the property ineligible for exemption. So it wouldn't have been exempt for 2017, no matter if it had been eligible or not. I mean,
Explain that to me, just like all of it.
in property taxes or property assessments, it's how the property exists as of the first of the year. So as of the first of the year, he did not own the property. So because of that situation, his ownership of the property, because it came later in the year, makes it ineligible for exemption because of that for 2017. So 2018, he didn't get through an office problem with one of his managers who no longer works there. They didn't get the forms in to request the exemption, which are required by state law to be in my office by March 1st until June. because of that law, I could not even review the forms to make an exemption determination, so it stayed on the roll. What happened in the meantime, they had asked for a review of the property, and in that review, we did reduce the value for 2018 from what it was to what it is currently.
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yes.
So what was it, what did you reduce it to?
We reduced it,
I have it here. It's on your document.
right.
Right.
The 2018 value is $385,600, a reduction of $425,600.
Because it was over 800,000.
Yep, third
Right.
line down, it was
It was
811.
originally $811,200. So we reduced it significantly based on a request to review it. Because they didn't get the information into us in a timely manner, we don't have any choice but to go by the law and deny the request for exemption that came in too late. We do that for everyone. So I advise the pastor that his only course of action is to ask for a waiver of taxes through this body.
So, by law, no matter how much you'd want it, you can't grant him what he was looking for.
No.
But we
I
might
can-
be able to.
Right,
Right.
but I
You
just
can't
wanted
grant
to
an exemption, you can waive taxes, but
Okay.
through my office is the one that can grant an exemption. So
I
you
see.
can waive taxes or grant a partial rescission or whatever you want to do that way. But through my office, I can't do anything. So that's why I suggested that he take this course of remedy.
All right. Do you have an issue with that?
I have no issue. I set my values based on what I could do at the time. So what goes beyond that, I don't have any control over it.
Is there any history of something like this happening in the past that you're aware of?
I believe that we had a similar situation with the Swan properties, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. Pastor Swan had a property that he did get the exemption form in on a timely fashion and had to go through a similar process. There wasn't a question of exemption on that whatsoever. The form had been misplaced for some reason. There was a question on whether it was ever received or not. So it went through the same process.
Okay.
So
And
this
what-
is,
and what was the outcome?
I believe that they did waive taxes in that instance. But I think it took a longer process, and in the meantime, they did file the forms in a timely fashion, and I did exempt it, so there was a history that it would have been exempt. I, at this point, don't have a way to know whether it will be exempt. I have not been through the property myself.
Okay.
So this is something that's up to you, whether or not you want to waive a portion of it, you want to waive the entire thing. That's based entirely on your own decision.
Well, I would like to hear more about what the property is being used for. Do we want Alder Johnson?
Just a
or-
question for
Go ahead.
Russ. Has the property achieved exemption status for 2019?
That isn't due until March of 2019. I haven't gotten the forms yet. Those aren't, they haven't been submitted yet.
Okay.
But he doesn't have to wait till March to submit the forms. I mean, he could submit them tomorrow if he wanted to.
I won't review them until then. I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's as of the first of the year, so I generally don't review them until after the first of the year because
So-
you have to look at them because a lot of things could change between now and then.
So what is it based on? What is your
It's based on
decision?
occupancy and use. I mean,
Okay, so when we will hear a little bit more about the use and occupancy,
Right.
then at the end of that, could you give us kind of a general, what you think might happen, based on what we hear?
I've already rendered my decision as far as the value of the property as of this year. Anything I do now would go against what I've already decided, so that would be something I couldn't do.
Oh, I was just saying projecting into the future for 2019.
For the future,
What you think
it all
might happen
it all
in
depends
2019.
upon where he's at as of the first of the year. If all the property proceeds are used for mortgage and expenses for that particular property, then it would be exempt. But if it's turned over and used for other properties, they kind of take a look at it a little bit differently, because then you're looking at a property that's being used for maybe
More for
for-profit
profit instead of-
uses
yeah.
that is going against some of the other for-profit entities in the area, and it's kind of in competition. So
Okay.
it's kind of a fine line there that you have to look at.
So then I might want to look at what actually has been done during this past year with the property. I mean, you can't, because by law, you did what you had to do.
Right.
But our committee might want to see, is it currently being used for a nonprofit purpose?
You want to look at, if you're going to decide what's for 2018, you want to look at what was there as of the first of the year 2018.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that's our determining factor, and I guess that would be the standard that I would suggest you use also. And same with 2017, what's there, in 2017, there's no question in my mind that it wouldn't have been exempt mainly because of the reason he didn't own it as of the first of the year. If he had gotten in and didn't ask for a review sooner, we probably would have made the reduction
Okay.
and such as we had done for 2018. But that was something that his office manager at the time didn't get us the paperwork in time. So, and then in the meantime, the board review had already adjourned, so that opportunity had gone away. So when we did get the paperwork, we reviewed it for 2018 and made the reduction.
So it went from 18,414 down to what? 8,800.
So those are two separate years.
Right, I get it, two
Right.
separate years. But there's a possibility that it would have still gone down that year?
For 2017, if they would have gotten the information
If
to
they would've
us in a
gotten the
timely
information
fashion,
in time.
it potentially could have gone down.
It could have gone down.
Right.
Okay.
All right, and just to clarify, all proceeds generated by the property must go towards,
Has to go through mortgage, debt reduction, and expenses for that particular property.
for the property, not
For
for
the property.
projects or programs or anything else?
I mean, could-
Well, it has to be related to that particular property
Okay,
because it's
okay.
taxes and an exemption for that particular property.
What happens if somebody buys a property in September and it is for a church or something like that, which would be exempt? Now, who paid the taxes? The owner before that had to pay the taxes?
It would be
or does-
prorated, just like any other property, it would be prorated. The 9 months would be for the previous owner, then the 3 months would be, settled at closing would be for the church would pay that.
So when did they purchase it?
It would have been in February. So they would have gotten 2 months, or roughly a month and a half worth of the prorated taxes towards the 2017 taxes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So the exemption certificate for 2018, it shows was received on June 12th. Will that exemption certificate be considered then for 2019, or does he have to submit a new?
You have to fill out a new one each year, stands on. So
Each year you have to?
You would have, that one that he filled out was from 2018, since it was too late, you would have to fill out another one for 2019.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Like to
Yep. Make a motion to open the floor.
Butler Galvin, second floor, all the purpose Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the floor is now open. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak to this? Pastor. Could you just state your name and address?
I'm Pastor Manuel Rico. I'm the director of the Transformation House. The Transformation House is a facility geared to helping men get back on their feet. We have guys coming in from prison, probation, parole. We even had a few guys court ordered there. We opened in 2012, January, and since January 2012, we done housed over, January of this year, it was over 600. And so, and doing our statistics, we have 80% from homeless to independent living. We were located at 436 South Jefferson for a little while, for 6 years, and couldn't see eye to eye with the owner of the building. We was paying, going through a whole lot, so we decided to purchase the building. So the 606, 610 South Broadway building came up for sale, and we purchased the building for $290,000. And so, and that was, and then we closed in February. And I was speaking to the alderman in the area. It was summer at the time, and he said, Pastor Rico, get down there to the county assessor office immediately and get the papers for taxes in. So I went down there, got the papers, had an administrator woman, she filled out the paperwork, and we took him back down here. I don't know, it was a different guy than Russell. As far as I was concerned, the papers was in, it was done, and when I found out that it wasn't, it just like, wow. And then, so I didn't bother by putting in the papers again for this year, because I felt it was already in for the last year. And also I was looking at, we purchased it at $290,000. I was like, you know, the taxes on that. But the building itself, we have been doing extensive work on the building. We just about finished turning the unfinished area on the first floor into a community center, where we have classes. We do faith-based AA and A classes there. We do help the guys with the GED program, and so we just try to put together a good facility that will help get the men back where they need to be at. So in the past, guys are getting back with their wives, connected with their children. And it's just been, you know, exciting to me to see what's going on, you know. But as far as the revenues, that the building, everything stays there. Everything is all about the program, and we don't receive much funding. It's for some reason, when it comes down to men, I run into the line, men don't need no help. So we don't get that much help when it comes down to men, but it's very important that we do help our men, because they need to be reconnected with their children, they need to be connected. And so there's no profit in this. If it was, you know, it's the whole thing has been, you know. But my mission is to reach out to the community. We've been doing the jail ministries. We've been doing all type of outreaches. But anyway, we ask you to consider the taxes, waiving the taxes on there, so we can continue to keep on going, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alder Johnson, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, so I'm just kind of, I was crunching some numbers here and thinking about some options that you have in front of you. Of course, the option that we have on the table is just a full waiver. That's kind of the request right now. But after listening to some of Russ's testimony here, I would like to at least float out there a second option for you to consider, if that's not palatable. And in particular, taking a look, I mean, at least to my knowledge, there's been no, you know, structural changes done to the property that, you know, would justify devaluation of the property. It's really just a trigger that said, hey, we'd like you to come relook at the value of the property. So the value of the property, I mean, what was there didn't change at all. It was just the assessment that we put on it. So minimally, I would at least like you to entertain applying the 2018 value to the 2017 taxes, and in addition, still ask you to consider the waiver of the 2018 value, knowing that the work that's going on in that facility truly is something that would be tax exempt if not for a clerical error.
I just want to ask Diana something. So if we waive all of it, has the money been spent already from that budget year, or is there
The
contingency?
2017 value is what we built the 2018 budget on. So the $18,414 was built in, and that was part of the 2018 budget. If and when we write some or all of it off, then we would have to find another funding source to cover that, and potentially I would have to almost recommend contingency.
Contingency fund.
Because right now, that is part of what we already have, those revenues to offset 2018 budget.
I guess I'll let the committee speak before I do, so. Anyone?
Any questions?
Do we need to close the floor?
Questions, but I don't.
If unless anyone else wants to speak,
Does anyone else want to speak to this?
then I'll
Does
make a
anyone else
motion to
wanna
close the
speak?
floor.
Anyone else? Okay. Moved by Alder Galvin to close the floor.
Second.
Second by Alder LaFave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Committee.
Well, you know, it's difficult for everybody, but I believe because of the good work, we don't want to, because these taxes, it's going to put a burden on them, and I don't know why they don't need any outside funding. The program is really a good program, and I really would feel bad if we maybe paid the taxes. I'd almost like to waive it. I think it's not that much. I mean, if it was a huge, and it was something that was really their fault. I mean, it's kind of, I think he didn't get the good advice when he went into not realizing he had to apply again. And there were so many different, situations that happened with this. So I'd like to make a motion that we excuse full, was it, how much was that? Was it the 8th or the 18th?
Well, it's
18, right?
both. It's
For both years. So
Yeah,
that
for
would
both
be-
years, it'll be 18,414 plus 8,869.
Those would be both. Yeah.
This is a matter of the accrued interest as well.
Plus the matter of accrued interest as well.
As well.
Okay, so,
Yes.
do we want to have a little more discussion first, or you've made a motion? Is there a second to that
I'd
motion?
like to ask some questions first.
Can we hold
I
on that
can-
then? Okay,
Sure.
all right.
Um,
Alder?
For finance, we've in the past forgiven property taxes on properties in Green Bay. How does that impact us though? Like we're talking about, this was based on our budget, so our budget's gonna be short, we're gonna have to go into contingency fund. How much of that can we withstand?
Well, if we're taking it from contingency, currently we have 100,000 sitting here, that is really, a contingency it's a budgeted line item for situations that were just not budgeted. So at this point, we have 102,000 sitting in there. If nothing else comes up the rest of the year, if you're gonna decide to write off a portion of that 18,000, it would just reduce the contingency of 102. That is available for these type of, for potentially unbudgeted items.
And how many properties, I mean, if you know, how many properties do we forgive taxes on?
It would all be determined that at some point that they were determined that they were exempt, and maybe they just didn't meet the criteria of the deadline, because we aren't gonna forgive them if they really owe the property.
Right.
It's timing of getting paperwork in, or if it should have been
Sure.
determined as exempt and it didn't make it in time for the, during the budget process.
So what about looking at that 1 month of January? Is that the prior owner's responsibility to have paid that?
Yeah, at closing time, anytime you close any property, that person who closes they prorate it and give them an estimate on what they think the next year's tax bill would be. And the person who sold the property has already paid about, based on the data of when it was purchased in February, a month to 2 months worth of that. This bill, this 18,000, he would have received that at the closing. It would have been in part of his closing doc.
Okay, then that part should still be paid, I think.
Because it would have been, yes.
Yeah. Alder purpose tax, do you have any?
So we're saying it's the 18,414, the 8,000, or 8,869, and then the accrued interest of 1,289.
But I would just like to add that I think that portion that had been paid by the prior owner, that portion,
You could amend our motion to.
yeah, I would like to amend that to say that whatever that amount is, that still should be paid, because that was paid by the prior owner for that month when they closed. So that money.
This is the total for the whole year,
Right.
you're saying?
Yes, any
Right.
bill is
So
going
then
to
you have to
be for the.
deduct that part.
Right.
Because I'm not opposed,
So
I
how
agree,
would-
I think the
okay.
work is good. It is work we need in this city. You would have been exempt. Obviously, since the structure didn't change, how did it go from being worth so much to being worth way less than that? So I'm in much agreement with waiving those taxes because I think you would have been exempt. However,
But he didn't own it on 1/1.
but he didn't own it on January 1st. But he could have requested what, a different assessment of that? So then it would have gone down quite a bit. Staff, do you have any recommendation?
Well, the 2017, if and when you were, like I said, we already have the 2017 value, which is presently 2018 budget, that's already been obligated. If you choose to write any of it off, you're gonna have to use, find a funding source. So my recommendation is, if you decide to write it off, you have to find a funding source, and it's probably contingency. And then I think you have to take 18 as a separate item, you have to choose.
Okay.
I think you should take them as two
Maybe
separate
we could
items.
take 18 first, because that might be easier.
Take 2017 first.
You want to take 27?
Might as well get it done and get it
All
out
right.
of the way.
Alder Galvin, do you have a motion?
A motion that the 2017 taxes be exempted except for the time period where the building was owned by the previous owner, and that those taxes be paid.
Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that. Again, echo the sentiments here as far
Okay.
as it's
Yeah.
good work.
Previous should hit,
I think it's a lot more common than people think, that people don't realize that you have to file tax exempt every year, and they just don't realize it, and they forget, or it's just oversight. I do think it's more common than people realize.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, Alder?
Just to see clarification on the motion, does that also include the accrued interest?
We didn't,
Right.
I don't know if we got there yet, but I guess it
Yeah,
could.
but if we're talking about 2017, then it should be the whole thing. So yes, it would also include the
Yes.
accrued interest.
Accrued interest.
Okay.
Do you accept that amendment? Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Would you like to
Yes.
amend it to say where the funding is coming from right away?
Yes.
Yes.
Amended to say that the funding would come from the contingency fund.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yes.
Do we need to go through a whole motion to amend it?
No,
Okay.
I think.
All right.
Go.
So it's acceptable,
Yes.
the contingency fund? Okay, all right. So the motion is to forgive the taxes for 2017 in the amount of $18,414.60 plus $1,289.02 minus whatever the amount would be for that time when the property was not owned by the Transformation House. And that funding would be taken from the contingency fund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Unless you want us to do that on our screen?
That's
We're okay? All right. So now, let's talk about the 2018 tax bill. And that's because it was not filed in a timely manner.
Correct. At this point, it's going to go into the tax roll, and even though the assess goes down, the estimated bill, when they go out in December, he would receive a bill around $8,900.
And that money has not been obligated yet.
That has not been obligated
So
at
we
this
don't need
point.
to take it from the fund. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to exempt the property from the 2018 property tax assessment.
Second. Motion made by Alder Galvin to accept it from the 2018 taxes, seconded by Alder LaFave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Can I mention something? We should talk to,
Maybe you should,
after I think his name.
well, why don't you talk to Alder Galvin, Alder Johnson later? And
Can
Call me
I,
Alder
pass the
Galvin.
I
information.
apologize.
Yes.
We're going to have to clarify that motion.
Okay.
Because again, the committee cannot exempt a property.
Oh, you're
They-
right.
Russ,
Waive
the
it.
They can
assessor can
waive it,
exempt it, but you can
so-
waive the dollars or find a funding source to waive it, but you cannot exempt it.
Okay, so
Oh,
the wording was
that's
wrong.
Oh, not
Change the wording
exempted
to waive.
To waive.
Give it or something.
Waive.
To waive.
Okay. Do you want us to go through that again then? Or do you just want to change the word to waive?
Are we all in agreement with?
Yes.
We are all in agreement. Yes. Okay.
Right.
All right, let's go back to.
I actually have a request from the attorney Chavez asking whether or not we could move number 4 up in front of number 3.
Okay.
Making a motion to change the agenda and move number 4.
Do we have to, or just amend the agenda? Would you like us just to make a motion to amend the agenda?
I'm not sure, I might even look to our attorney if we need to move it out. Can they just move it?
Suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules? All right.
Thank you.
Right, yes. Okay, Alder Dex made a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second by Alder Galvin to move item 4 up in front of item 3. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2.
And then at this point, I don't know if you want to read it, number 4.
Number 4 is, an update with possible action on status of litigation in the following matters. COGB versus CIVMIC arbitration, Tipler versus City of Green Bay et al., City of Green Bay versus Denny et al., and I believe that we'll be wanting to convene in closed session, so would you like me to read the?
I think you would wait until you were going to move into closed
Okay.
session. It doesn't matter. I'm going to turn that over to our attorney to discuss this item.
So I would recommend we go directly into closed session just because we are going to be talking about litigation on all 3 of these and they are pending claims.
All right. So I will read the verbiage. The council may convene in closed session pursuant to section 1985 1G Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The council may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.852 Wisconsin statutes to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Motion.
Second by Alder Galvin, second by Alder Corpus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are in closed session. Well, yeah, I think maybe with the door open now it'll get less cold. It just got,
Yeah,
I think because the door
started,
was.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get some body heat going. Yeah, I'll get some more bodies in, here. All right, we're back in open session. So in closed session, we instructed staff to proceed we're now instructing staff to proceed as directed in closed session.
Yeah, you'll need a motion to that.
I'll need a motion to that effect to instruct.
Make a motion that staff proceed as directed.
By Alder Galvin, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And before you move on from this item, just confirm that you talked about nothing but the closed session items.
Okay, I would like to confirm that we talk about nothing but the closed session items. Okay. All right, now legally we can move forward. All right, back to number 3. Okay, consideration with possible action on amendments to Claims Administration Procedure Ordinance GBMC 7.01 at SEC, providing for changes to the city's claims committee and establishing a relief fund. Well, you can come forward and talk about this.
So this is my item as well. When we were amending the Claims Committee ordinance, we found that there were a couple of things that we should propose to you. The first is changing the amount of the authority of the Claims Committee. Right now, our authority is limited to $5,000. That claim means, or that level of claim authority means that we are usually just addressing potholes. We've been fortunate that we haven't had a ton of them that have come forward that have been in that, that range, or above that range, but, really we're looking at vehicles that have changed their value over the years, and so even just getting a side mirror, if a snow plow hits it or something, a lot of those are, north of $2,000 just because they're so expensive now. So the first thing we're doing is asking you to change the amount of the authority of the claims committee. So the reason we picked $50,000 is because the $50,000 represents the bulk of the claims that we will receive. Under the Tort Claims Act, the recovery limits are $50,000 for everything with the exception of automobiles. And so we aren't going to have claims that will be coming to you outside of those automobile ones. And so this would handle all those property damage claims that we get. So anytime a car is totaled, we'll be able to act on it expediently instead of incurring additional costs for towing. And usually it's when it's towed, then you have to house it. And so we're just waiting and waiting and waiting to get that approval figured out so that we can actually get those done. And so that's really where that $50,000 mark comes from. The second thing we're asking for is to really revamp the way that the committee is set up in general. Right now, we have 3 people who sit on it. Since we are asking for a substantially higher number, we are also asking that you increase the number of people who sit on it. This way, there's less concern that you've got a couple people really looking at it. Right now, it is 2 attorneys and the finance director or his or her designee. We'd be also asking to add the paralegal, because the paralegal really is the person who does a lot of the legwork on getting all those claims researched and finding out what information there is and whatnot. So they're the person with the most facts on every single claim. The second is our risk manager. In the past, we've had the risk manager sit in as the designee for the finance director, but we see benefit to having both. And so that's what we're looking at, is expanding it to include the 2 attorneys, member of finance, our risk manager, and then our paralegal. Those would now be the voting members of the committee. The other component that we identified was the need for, or the request that had come out of the discussions that have been had here, was for potentially a fund that could assist people in times when their claims were going to be denied. And so that's the second component that you're going to see is the relief fund. And so that one would require this council to actually establish a fund, designate how much it wants to be put aside into that fund, and then we put the parameters around it. In order to provide any money to anybody, it has to be for a public purpose. And so we identified a number of public purposes that we think will pass constitutional muster. So in this case, it includes, if it's going to cause a negative impact on the levy, that's a public interest for sure. If it is going to allow somebody to get medical treatment that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, if they're going to be able to still continue their job, like if their equipment gets destroyed, or they're going to school and their equipment gets, whatever. So that's really what the point of that relief fund would be. We try to keep it as separate from the claims committee as possible. And so this one would not be triggered until somebody submitted a claim and the claim was denied. This way, whether or not to grant somebody some relief in a situation where otherwise the city has no liability, would be decided by the finance, and then the rest of the claims would be decided based on liability exclusively by the claims committee.
So the finance committee would decide if the relief fund was going to be used?
Correct.
Is there, I imagine you'll be sending us, or this will be developing some parameters and controls and things like that. I mean,
I think they're in here.
Yeah, there's a number of them already identified.
right, I just didn't know if you were going to be working on it more, or if it's, what you think is it's a set.
What we would recommend is that after you guys have a chance to review it, to identify those kinds of issues where you think that it would be appropriate and allow us to figure out a way to potentially incorporate it in. This way, I mean, we're never going to be able to provide for every potential kind of incident, but this way at least we have some guidance as to what kind of incidents you guys would like to potentially address.
And I mean, how is the limit statutorily $50,000 then for claims that are denied, or it can be a different amounts? What?
So when we do the claims committee, that is only ever able to be $50,000. That doesn't mean we get claims above that. It just means the city's exposure will only ever be $50,000.
So where would the money come from for a fund like this?
This would have to be something that the county or the city would establish separately for a relief fund.
And can it be used for anything that's happened already in 2018?
That would be up to you all entirely.
To make it retroactive.
I mean, really, you could decide that claims could be submitted starting in 2018, and then you could decide whether or not to move forward on those. But the way it's written right now, no, it doesn't have a time.
So okay, so we have not very much now left in the contingency fund, but where else could that funding come from for 2018?
I would leave that to discretion of this.
Just.
And it may be something that you guys need to build into for 2019 instead of starting it in 2018.
And so potentially any claim the city denies, they have the ability then to come to the finance committee and resubmit technically.
Even if we didn't establish it until 2019, because we don't have funds right now, can we still start it as of January 1st, 2018?
As long as it continues to serve a public purpose, yes. If it's no longer serving the public purpose, then
So if a
that's
public
where
purpose
problem
is to prevent an incident-related decrease in property taxes, and if as a result of something that happened that was denied by claims, there was a decrease in property taxes, that would be serving the public interest.
More than likely. Again, that's something that this committee would have to ultimately make that decision on. You guys would be the fact finder and the decision as far as policy goes. But I think that there would be a justifiable, I mean, that's the whole purpose, is to avoid a negative impact on the levy.
Okay. So no matter what, I mean, if we pass this ordinance tonight, do we have to have answers to all those questions, or we have to talk about this in council? There have to be a number of readings. We have 3 months. I wonder if let's have discussion up here or from any of the other alders. Let's have some discussion.
I mean, the elephant in the room right now is the families that were affected by the broken water main.
Right.
And I mean, those claims are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, I don't think they're in the hundreds of thousands.
Altogether?
I thought it was 90, and then 15 and 15. Anybody
We can
remember?
discuss in closed session, but they revised them. One claim we received was for almost $250,000. The other ones were.
Oh, it got revised. Okay.
And I mean, that's just one. And if you read the claims, there's motor vehicles, there's homes, there's injuries from falls. I would almost ask if we could get a report on the total amount of claims we've received each year for the last 2 or 3 years, just to give us an idea what we're potentially talking about. And then how are we going to fund it? Which is what, levy? That's about the only way. And then how much do we build it up to? And I see, yes, some good coming out of this, but I also see some potential, if the claims committee denies it, because they think there's no basis for a claim, then why are we then?
Well,
But that was all the legal parts of
Right.
it, our insurance, blah, blah, blah.
the insurance
But
part.
This
Okay,
is
so then the
all-
other
this is
part,
different.
as she's establishing, is an impact on the city.
Right.
Not our hearts.
Right, it's an
Okay.
impact on a
Right.
And
decrease
that's
in
what
property
and
taxes.
that's what I think we have to be
Right.
careful
But
of.
there's, we can combine those kinds.
Provide for
We
the
can talk
welfare of
about-
city residents,
Yeah.
providing for access for living essentials and
And
heat.
I guess I would
Because
ask
remember, we were-
staff, if the finance committee, if a claim is denied for legal purposes, and the finance committee sees fit to give them some money regardless, does this open us up potentially for, a pending lawsuit or something like that?
No. So the way we've drafted it, we make it clear that these are completely separate issues, that there is no assumption of liability or admission of liability by the finance committee deciding to fund it. There's also a caveat that if a person ultimately was able to recover against the city on a liability claim, that any amounts they received
Yes.
from the
Yes.
relief fund would be deducted.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, wasn't very nice in the newspaper We're really slammed.
Well,
Look at those other communities
but if
that
you look
stepped
at-
forward and did things.
but if you look at the report that came out, that report that came out that we got from our attorney,
We should probably discuss that in closed session.
Okay, and
After,
that's-
later, during the other part of the meeting.
I'm just
So-
saying that
right,
what
I
was in
know.
the news was not necessarily accurate, and people are responding on gut feeling and not on
So
accurate
let's go
facts.
back to this possible ordinance. All right. Other alders that have, I forgot to mention before, we have Alder Stoyer in the audience, we have Alder Johnson, and we have Alder Weary here tonight. Yes, Alder Johnson.
Two questions. One is if we establish a relief fund and somebody were to receive compensation from that relief fund, would that release any claims that they might have against the city?
No. But they'd also have to
So
give
in
them.
this case, we could be looking again at a six-figure lawsuit. They could still bring that lawsuit against us even if we gave them money from the relief fund.
They'd have to give it back, then, the relief fund money. That's in there.
That's in
It's in
there.
there.
If they
I
got
mean,
anything then.
that would be
compensation
deducted.
after, yeah.
If the
Yeah, and
city,
I get that. Can we put into contingency that they have to release claim?
Not usually, because they really are supposed to be treated separately. I mean, one is because you're doing it because there's a benefit to the public purpose, the other one is because it's litigation. So, no, probably not.
Okay. Second question I have, I see it's listed as residents and/or businesses. Generally, businesses have different types of insurance coverage, you know, that can help cover things, you know, with the disruption of business, or, I mean, they just have whole new layers of coverage that, I mean, I'm wondering if we really need to include businesses in this. I mean, to me, the purpose of this is to kind of, you know, take care of your residents.
what
you know.
if the business was an in-home daycare? I mean, is that a business?
Well, it's also a home,
And
a resident,
okay, I'm just saying.
yeah.
That's a decision for y'all to make.
But I mean, I would like some more information about, you know, whether or not, I mean, again, my experience is there are plenty layers of business coverage that really should be able to take care of them in almost any circumstance.
I don't know enough about business.
Home businesses.
Then it
Well,
would be-
I floated out there, I think it's something that needs to be discussed, whether or not businesses should be included in
Okay,
this.
okay, so that could be discussed. How many of these types of claims have we had in the last 5 years, 10 years? Or did you guys look at that at all? I mean-
So we routinely look at the number of claims that we get to kind of get an idea of where our exposure is.
Okay.
A lot of them that we deny is because we don't have prior notice of something or we've responded appropriately. Essentially, there's no negligence by the city.
Okay.
The ones that usually are the highest numbers that get denied are sewer backups.
So backups.
Those are usually the big ones.
And do we have, how many of those, do we have many?
I couldn't tell you exactly how many we have. I would say we have probably a handful a year at least.
And we don't usually cover sewer backups at all?
It depends on if we had prior notice and if we followed our maintenance schedule, stuff like that.
that's when you get all those notices about flushing and, you know, when there's complaints, and the city goes out and checks them right away, and you get a letter saying that they went out and checked this complaint and there was no problem. I don't know if you've ever got, I get quite a few, maybe it's because I live in an older district,
Yeah,
but
I never got one.
So they do routine maintenance. They do telescoping when there's issues. Ones that have a higher frequency of discharges causing backups in there, they put those on a more frequent schedule. And so that's usually when it happens is, you know, something major or random, like sand or something will get into the system, then that's what backs it up, which there's no way we could have known that, or somebody's putting too much grease or whatever in it. But as long as we're following our schedule, there's only so much the city can do in any
But
given year.
typically with a sewer backup, would an insurance company pay for that?
Sometimes.
Because in this case, and whenever it's a water main, it's water outside the house. And if you don't live in a floodplain, you're not going to have flood insurance, most likely. But if most insurances pay for the sewer backup, I don't know enough about that.
You can insure for almost anything.
Way back when
Okay.
East River flooded,
Yeah.
My friend on the bay, her basement, it came up, and they said it was an act of God. So
That's
she
what can
got
happen.
nothing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots
so
of
it's-
acts of God.
Yeah, yeah.
What? So, okay, I guess another question, and you may not know the answer right now, but how much are these sewer claims? How much do we need to put in a fund? I mean, we need to have some idea of
So you'd
that.
be looking at it from two perspectives. The one would be paying what is necessary to address the public purpose versus the entirety of it. And then you
Right.
could also just get an idea of what the claims are, which we could give you that information. But, if we're limiting it to a public purpose, then a lot of, personal items aren't gonna fall within that. It's gonna be more the stuff that people need to their day-to-day living essentials that they're going
Like
to
their
need.
furnace maybe, or their
Yes.
carpeting, flooring.
I don't know. We'd have to look at everything on
This
individual.
is,
So maybe you have to-
this is a can of worms that when you open this up,
Yeah.
you are gonna have claims coming in from everywhere about everything, and they're gonna make you feel awful about what they've had to go through, because some of them have gone through some very awful things. I guess my concern is, if we fall in too deep in this thing, we could create a quagmire for us financially. And I mean, I feel for these people out on Humboldt Road, I really do. And there's gonna be stuff in the future that's gonna happen. But, at what point, I guess I wanna be very sure, and I'm not sure yet if there's enough checks and balances in this.
The other option would be putting a cap on the total amount of recovery or the total amount of allocation for the relief fund.
Okay. In addition, would that have to be added to this ordinance?
Do other communities have relief funds like this?
That I do not know. Again, I was just trying to address an issue that
That
was
we
brought
had
up.
asked for.
And so we were putting together a public notice. If you want us to look into what other communities are doing.
I do.
We can.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we send this
Do that
back?
with others
Yes.
too, yeah.
I make a motion that this be sent back to staff for further study. I mean, you've done
A really good job.
a really good job here. You've covered a
Yes.
lot of the angles I wouldn't have even thought about, and some of the things that could be applied to in that. But I guess I'd like to see a little bit more what's, like, what are our total claims? I mean, what are
Yes.
we potentially looking at?
What the claims are too.
What the
they're-
claims
Yeah,
are,
what
what kind of
are,
categories they
yes.
fall into, and
So
then
we
if
kinda-
anyone else, I think there was an article in the paper about Eau Claire, La Crosse doing something
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
I thought I saw that too.
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
And it's funded by Levied, so I'd like to maybe see what some of these other communities who've had experiences like this and how they've handled it.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
maybe one more question too, Vanessa, as you're doing that research. I mean, it seems to me that, I don't know if it's appropriate in this, but I want to throw out there for discussion, if there should be a demonstration of hardship. So, and that's part of my thing with the businesses, right? It's, all of a sudden, you've got multi-million-dollar conglomerate filing for, $1,000 claim because they can. And that's what I don't want to see the taxpayers funding.
Well,
So-
it's like if their insurance didn't, I mean, in
One of the caveats we did put in there is that if there were
Our
insurance
insurance
proceeds
company.
or proceeds covered from elsewhere, it would
Right.
not qualify.
right.
Well, and again, aside from that though, I mean, you open yourself up to that, right? I think the whole purpose of the relief fund, to me at least, discussions I've had, is about hardship. In a situation like we're talking about on Humboldt Road, I mean,
Well,
we're
it's not even on
potentially-
Humboldt, actually, it's
Okay.
down the hill, but.
But we're potentially bankrupting a family, and we're not that we're doing it, but it's
Right. Right.
this incident that was out of their control.
Right.
Could potentially bankrupt them. And I think, to me, that's the essence of the relief fund. I understand that this can open a can of worms.
Right.
And but that's why I think this is about hardship and the strain that it's putting on a family
In
and
our
and how we
community.
respond to that
City of Green Bay.
as a community to
Yes.
say, these things are out of your control, and I
Right.
feel like you can judge a lot about a community by how it responds to its residents in their greatest time of need. And I don't want that to be lost. I'm not looking to subsidize residents or people that are capable of taking care of losses,
Okay.
and figuring out how to
Right.
handle that.
It's
That's
somewhere
my
along
concern.
the way, someone has to judge that, I mean, this case was pretty easy to judge, but there could be others that won't be quite as clear cut, but. Alder Sawyer? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I really would like to see what other communities have done on this as well. You know, you mentioned La Crosse, Eau Claire, there's a number of other communities. You know, I think one thing with the claims, and Vanessa, do we get those once a month or once every other month? The envelopes?
When they-
So we strive for once a month. We
Once a month.
actually make sure they are here every quarter.
All right.
Sometimes we just don't have enough to refer.
Well, I think that would be easy enough to get those numbers, you know, from that, to get that. But like I said, I like to see what other communities do, and I think it should go back to staff for that. So,
Right, and so I would say too, if any others come up with any other questions, they should email Vanessa with any other questions they might have on this. So for right now, we had motion to send it back to staff,
I'll second that.
and it was
There's
seconded
too
by
many
Alder Corpus.
questions out there still.
Okay.
That we need answers to before sending this to council.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Take it up at our next finance meeting. All right, we are on now number 5. Consideration with possible action on the report of the purchasing manager. Come on up.
Right, the first item, I think it's 5A on your agenda, is a request to approve the purchase of ammunition for the police department from the low bidder, Keesler Police Supply, for $34,038. We did an RFQ. We received 2 responses, and we're recommending the award to the lowest bidder.
Okay, so do you need a separate motion on that? Dana, a separate motion?
You can take them all at once.
Okay, so then continue.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take them all.
Item 5B is a report, and I want to make a correction on the agenda here. The agenda reads, we're going to report on the purchase of 16 vehicles for various city departments off of the 2018 State of Wisconsin Veteran contracts for $480,677. The dollar amount is correct. The number of vehicles is actually 18.
Okay,
So
Okay, good.
I'd like the record
Sounds better.
to reflect that.
thank you.
And then thirdly, I'm asking for your pre-approval to purchase 2019 vehicles that are approved as we go through the 2019 budgeting process to use the state vendor net contract. We've been doing that for the last 12 years. And those vehicles have all been competitively bid by the state. And occasionally, if we're buying a large number of vehicles, like I think 2 years ago we bought 12 or 15 squad cars, we will put out our own RFQ to see if we can achieve some additional savings. But this is a real time saver in most of the time.
Okay. I would entertain a motion for 5A, B, and C.
Make a motion that we approve the 5A and 5B and 5C.
As amended to the purchase of 18
yes.
vehicles.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Alder LaFave, second by Alder Galvin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you. The next item is report of the Claims Committee.
Yep, and this is going to be another Attorney Chavez's items to discuss.
Do we need to go into closed session?
If you have any questions and you would like to discuss it.
Yeah, we probably would like to discuss it. So,
Motion to move into closed session.
okay.
Second.
And I will read the language. The council may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.851G, Wisconsin statute, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The council may thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.852 Wisconsin statutes to report the results of the closed session and consider the balance of the agenda. We are in closed session. I don't know that we're voting on. Okay, I need clarification on what we're going to be voting. Are we voting on just that we heard the report, or that we are in favor of the report?
You approve the report?
We approve
Yeah, that's
the
what it is.
report. And what if we don't like something that's within?
The reporter's on.
The recorder's on.
I understand the reporters, and I know that.
Well, okay, depends on what it is.
Because I didn't know if we were just approving the fact that the report came to us.
So,
No. Schmidt. And Sandra. It was 2 vehicles.
Can I see what? Okay, so you can make the motion before we approve the report. Someone would have to say. But someone would have to say. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we're back in open session, and I believe Alder Lefebvre wants to make a motion.
Yes, I make a motion that the claim for Robert and Sandra Schmidt, resulting in a $22,897 thousand claim, go back to which committee? That would be the Finance Committee.
For the purpose of them reviewing it again?
To review it again.
Is there a second? No second, the motion fails for lack of second. I'll entertain any other motions?
I'll make a motion to accept the report by the Claims Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Alder Galvin to accept the report of the Claims Committee, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
And opposed. So do you want us to, it's not unanimous. Would you like us to vote on the?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next agenda item. The report of the Hotel Northland audit completed by Cowie Management Group, appointed by Paul Swanson, receiver.
There is an item in between there. It's
Oh,
just a
is
report of the
there?
finance director, and I didn't have
Oh,
much
I'm
to
sorry.
state. I just want to let you know, we started the budget, and the public notice will come out in mid-October, so that is what's keeping us busy at this time. And then if you want to move on to letter F.
Okay, letter F, report of the Hotel Northland audit.
At this point, I'd let you know that it's informational only. It was an external audit. It was requested by Paul Swanson, who is our receiver. So we are putting this information in there so you can review their outcome of it. At this point for this meeting, they were our receiver or the attorney nor the auditor was able to attend. However, there's a possibility that they're going to be at the council. So if you have any specific questions about the outcome of the results of the audit, they will potentially be at the council meeting. I don't know if you have any specific, any other questions?
So I can just give you an update of what it says. So the result of the audit indicated that there was some discrepancies between what the developer indicated that he spent the money from the HUD loan on versus what he actually did. And that discrepancy accounted for about $800,000 of the total amount that the city invested into the project. So we reached out and asked the auditor to confirm where that money actually went. The auditor went through and said, funds were commingled, so there's no way to tell you exactly where the funds were spent, but what I can tell you is that all the funds went into the project, meaning that none of the money got diverted, no pockets were lined, thank goodness, but we do have a discrepancy between what was actually said was being used, those funds were being spent on, versus what was ultimately purchased. The main one is, it looks like they had indicated they were purchasing kitchen equipment, and instead they were paying for other items that were coming through. So again, the good news is that all the money ultimately went into it. The bad news is that they didn't report out to us appropriately. We have been in contact with HUD, so that they're fully aware of what's going on. They are aware of the audit. We have sent them a copy of it. Yeah. Or are sending them a copy
Yeah,
of it.
I'm not a representative, I'm not,
But we have been in talks with them. They know it exists. We've already told them what it says. And so with that, we're reaching out and asking them to basically confirm that there are no issues with the expenditures that were identified versus the ones that were ultimately used. Our understanding from HUD is that what they're really concerned about is that HUD gets paid back for what HUD was lending us. So they've kind of indicated to us over the past few months that they don't really necessarily care what the expenditures, like they let the city make that determination as to whether or not it was a qualified expenditure. And so instead, we're just asking them to sign off. They've been really good to work with. This whole time, we've also been talking about amending the terms of the agreement so that we can actually get the developer's name on them. Like they've assumed, the new developer has assumed all of the old contracts, but now we actually need to get those names replaced on them and the terms re-figured out and all that stuff. And so they've been mostly telling us, great, we'll look at your audit for you. We're more interested in you actually bringing us the revised terms so that we can get that taken care of and have this completed.
can I add one clarification? In some cases, when there was a draw request, they would request, I don't know, let's say $2.5 million, and that is what they said they were going to be paying. We needed the money, they were gonna pay for these items. In some cases, the draws got paid short. So there were, they didn't receive all the money from all the funding sources. So that was another reason why, as they expected to pay these bills, but when the money came in short, they couldn't pay everything. So that was part of the reason why too. They thought they were gonna pay for this, it didn't happen, they didn't have all the money. Then they would put another request through, and again, it would get paid short. They had to choose, or in some cases, also like one of, I think it was for Halen, they had in there in the packet, they were gonna pay him $453,000, they ended up paying him $299, they ended up having to take a percentage, like they paid him 60% on the bill, because they had to now take a smaller amount of money that they requested, and they had to divvy it over other expenses. So that's part of the reason why, asked for one thing, got less money, they had to pick and choose, and they had to prorate some of the payments. So that also makes it look like they didn't pay what they asked for, but they also didn't get all the money that they'd asked for at that time of the request.
So at the end of the day, were any state laws violated?
There's a potential for the receivership to claim that they had engaged in contractor fraud because they told us it was bad for one thing.
Who engaged in contractor fraud?
The former developer,
Okay.
Hotel Northland LLC.
And no one else but the former developer?
Correct.
Okay. And at the end of the day, were any federal laws violated because of HUD's involvement in this?
No.
So as far as we know, there's a potential that some laws might have been violated, potentially by the former developers.
Correct.
And Mr. Swanson is obviously satisfied, from what I'm reading in his letter, that the city had no involvement in any of this.
Correct. Just to clarify, though, it's actually Marty Cowie, I believe. He's the auditor. He was hired independently by the receiver's attorney Swanson.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any,
So again, it's just informational, so.
okay.
If you don't have any more questions, then you can receive.
Receive, place, and file, entertain a motion, second by
I'll make that motion.
Alder Lefebvre, to receive and place and file, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item, the contingency fund.
Again, informational, we probably don't need to take any action on that one, but based on us taking roughly $20,000 worth of taxes out, we also know there's some additional closed captioning that's coming out of this budget. I would say we'll have a better number by next meeting, but we're down to about $84,000 then in the contingency fund after actions from tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then the next Finance Committee meeting will be held Tuesday, September 11th, 2018 at 4:30 p.m. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn by Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Lefebvre. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Like 5 minutes?